now see how holds are processed. We already had a look at the whole class. It has the book reference, the member reference, and the date. Let's look at how we maintain a list of holds. If you look at a member or a book, we have things like placing a hold, removing a hold, and so on. So if you want to remove a hold for a given member, suppose the user had placed a hold, and member had placed a hold, and now that hold has to be removed for that book, we need to search the list of holds. But if you want to search a list of hold objects, we need to produce the hold object first. But we don't have that yet. So we cannot use the java.util.lists methods to search for things or remove those things. So you need to have a custom collection to check whether the hold objects, which hold object for that matter, is having the book that this member wants to remove. So we have a collection called hold list used in both member and book. So what we should now do is look at the hold list. All right, the hold list class supports iterators, and it has a list of hold objects. There could be many instances of this hold list. All right. You can add a hold, you can remove a hold given a book ID, or you can remove a hold based on a member ID. So if you are given a book ID, the code iterates through the list of holds. So it gets each and every hold and gets the book ID of the corresponding book object. So the hold contains a book and it pulls the book ID. And if the ID matches the book ID given here, it removes the hold. And for this removal to be successful, so that it doesn't crash, you need to get a list iterator, not an ordinary iterator. The code for removing a hold corresponding to a member, which would come, this call would come from the book class, would be essentially the same. Only thing is now you are comparing against the member ID. And there are other methods that are fairly simple, like isEmpty, iterator. The method that is a little more involved is get next valid hold. Given a book ID, we need to go through its holds and get the next valid hold. So there may be some holds that are invalid, which you should skip over. So you get the holds and then get a hold and then see if it is valid. If it is valid, you return it. Otherwise, you remove that hold and then go to the next one. Again, you need to get a list iterator so that you can skip, rather, you can remove invalid holds. Otherwise, you will get a crash. Now, there are obviously methods here to place hold. remove hold and process hold. So those methods are there in user interface as well as library. The user interface for place hold gets the member ID, book ID, and duration, puts them into a request object here, and gets the result back of placing the hold. There could be several reasons why something could go wrong. You might have provided a bad book ID or a bad member ID, etc., etc. So if the operation could be completed, a proper message is printed. Similarly, we have remove hold, getting a given a member ID and book ID, the request object stores them and sends them to the library and gets the result back. And again, there could be several reasons for things to go wrong. And we have the process holds, which is executed when we need to figure out whom to call, which member should I call when I have this book that I know has a hold. So we get the book ID and ask the library to process the hold. And if the operation could be completed, there is this message printed. It could be that you mistyped the book ID and it is actually issued, in which case you get an error message. Otherwise, it could be that there are no valid holds anymore for this book, so no valid holds left, and then this is in a loop. Okay, let's take a look at the library. Nothing very difficult about any of these methods, actually. Placing a hold, lot of code, but nothing very substantial. Given a request to place a hold for a member for a book, you create a result object as usual, check for the member, check for the book, and then if it is not issued, you send an error back. Otherwise, you place a hold by putting the hold object in both the book as well as the member. Removing a hold is not difficult at all. Let's see where it is. Removing a hold is here. Okay, given a member and a book, you look for the member, look for the book, and if you find those two entities, you remove the hold object from both. That's it. We have seen how remove hold works in the hold list. The member and the book classes simply call those methods. And there is process holds, I think it is here. Given a book ID, you check whether it is existing. If not, you check whether it is actually issued, which is possible if the clerk makes a mistake, and you return an error code here. And if there are no valid holds, you return this error code. Otherwise, you send back the information about the member in the result object.